Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Black Brain Trust. Today is August 15th, Wednesday, August 15th. And my name is Lionel. I'm with my co-host, Mike. How you doing today, Mike?
Chilling, man. Yourself?
I'm well. Thanks for asking. Today is our geopolitical show. We got some good things for you all today. Um, so let's get hop straight into it. All right. Our first article is from Zero Hedge. Title: What they did was unacceptable. Saudis to dump Canadian assets, no matter the cost. Written by Tyler Durden. Ain't that okay? Anyway, um, article. I think this is an update to a previous article. Let's read the first update. Russia has sided with Saudi Arabia in the ongoing diplomatic rift with Canada on Wednesday, issuing a statement accusing the latter of attempting to politicize human rights issues. The statement said Russia rejected the authoritative tone of Canada towards Saudi Arabia, adding that the kingdom had the full sovereign right to manage its own affairs. We con- we consistently and firmly advocate compliance with universal human rights with due regard for the specific national customs and traditions that develop in a given country over a long period of time. We have also said that the politicization of human rights matters is unacceptable. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said in a statement posted on the ministry's website. Um, then to update number two, which is right up Am I still live?
You still alive?
Okay. Saudis are still weighing other measures to take against Canada. Now, I think a week and a half ago, or the other week, we went over a report which the I forgot the specific name, but there's a female, the representative of Canada and Saudi Arabia. She made comments about the human rights issue in Canada in Saudi Arabia when it comes to the women. And the Saudi Arabia officials took offense to that, saying, "Hey, you know you're in Saudi Arabia, and our standards have been upheld for umpteen years." So they basically deported her and sent her back to Canada. That's all I have on my statements about that one.
I was talking, but I didn't. I was on mute.
Okay.
Um, yeah, it just looks like it looks like they're pushing Canada back politically out of the Middle East, and they have the power to do so. This is Saudi Arabia that we're referring to, because what happens here is if Canada decides to go on their own, I mean they're already at odds with the Trump administration. So you take that into consideration as well as what they think they're doing inside Saudi Arabia. You're playing a dangerous game because you now have two global powers. You have obviously the United States that you have tariffs on, that you're in a tariff rift with, and and then you take into consideration with Saudi Arabia and their oil exportation with Aramco, um, as well as the diplomatic role that you have with them. You're pretty much going to pigeonhole yourself in. Um, no one's really going to take you seriously um, in that regard. So what Saudi Arabia and Russia is doing, Russia is playing, advocate, saying, well, yeah, we agree with Saudi Arabia and you should get out. That helps Russia push the West out of the Middle East and kind of cements a geopolitical footprint for themselves back into the Middle East.
Hmm. Hmm. And I don't know if it was I think you mentioned before that I think I got this from you that Canada, even though Canada have this benevolent image across the world, they're specifically not that in practice.
Right. I mean, they was bombing Syria just a couple of years ago during the Obama administration. So their warplanes were actually contributing to the death and destruction of Syria, and they were also participating in Iraq. Um, and so they don't really have much to say about human rights when they were actually participating in the same ventures. And when you take into consideration how Canada was formed as a nation state, they got rid of the Native Americans. They pretty much squeezed them out.
Hmm. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Man, this next article, Mike, this is this is really soap opera level stuff. On the Young Turks video, YouTube video, they did a video talking about Rex Tillerson literally prevented a war. Now, the war they're talking about is between Saudi Arabia and the Emiratis, or the United Arab Emirates. They were going to attack Qatar last year, I think October, November time frame last year. And Rex Tillerson didn't allow that to happen. He basically talked them down, talked Saudi Arabia and the UAE down from the ledge. Now, this article that I also have in conjunction with this video, I got it from the Young Turks, literally goes into detail about um, the the uh, the planned mission. I'm not going to read the first half because we're going to go over the first half. But what I will read is some of the second half, which talks about the invasion plan. The invasion plan raises questions about interventionist tendencies on the part of two of the U.S. closest allies and largest weapons clients. In recent years, both countries have demonstrated a willingness to use military force to reshape politics in the Gulf, intervening in Bahrain to suppress an Arab Spring uprising in 2011. All right. Now, I think this is paragraph is where it gets interesting. I read this before. I didn't mark off where got interesting. Robert Malley, president and CEO of Crisis Group and a former top Middle East advisor to President Barack Obama, said that since the summer of 2017, Qatari officials have consistently told him that their country had been threatened with invasion. There is little doubt that senior Qatari officials with whom I spoke were convinced, or at least acted as if they were convinced, that Saudi Arabia and the UAE had been planning a military attack on their country that was halted as a result of U.S. intervention, Mali told The Intercept. Tillerson's attempts to de-escalate the conflict in the Gulf diverged from the signals sent by the White House. Trump offered a full-throttle public endorsement of the blockade, tweeting that perhaps this will be the beginning of the end to the horror of terrorism. As Tillerson called on the Gulf countries to lift their embargo, Trump told reporters that the nation of Qatar, unfortunately, has historically been a funder of terrorism at a very high level. Now, also in this article was the actual plans, which I'm going to paraphrase here, which goes saying that they were going to I want to bring up a map of Qatar to have you all know what I'm talking about. Zoom out a little bit here. All right, so you have Saudi Arabia here, and United Arab Emirates. Qatar shares a border with Saudi Arabia. They were going to attack the border of Saudi Arabia. Now, the largest military base in the Middle East is in Qatar. Well, the plan was to go into Qatar, go around the military base, not engage in the U.S. military, and attack Doha. That is a bad move. Also, I remember went over maybe a month ago, precisely that Qatar ordered the S-400s from Russia. Now, I don't think we went over why they did that, but in light of this recent news, I'm putting two and two together to say, even though the article said since last year they have been saying, hey, we're being threatened from these two people. That's the reason why they purchased the S-400s. Any comments on this one?
It would be a catastrophe if Saudi Arabia was to go in there. Typically, you don't fight a war on two fronts. You have one going in Yemen, and then you have the other that would be inside Doha. Doha is not that big of a country, so you can get through the country in just about 4 hours. The amount of tanks that you would need to go in there and create a blitzkrieg and try to take the capital, you'll need a couple hundred tanks because the way the way the Qatar is set up militarily, it's basically like a porcupine. And if you try to get any sort of areas, you'll be pricking yourself every single time because the amount of missiles and coastal batteries that they have set up, for anti-warship activity, maritime security, as well as some of the tank traps that they have set up. They are preparing for a sort of an invasion that in case there is a diplomatic row between themselves and the other Gulf states, that they can at least survive for just long enough to create a negotiation, and take into consideration that Iran is a partner with actually Qatar because they share the same segment of water for energy, just because of the Persian Gulf. And then you take into consideration that Turkey has troops inside Doha. So if something was to happen, Turkey would actually react to that, and that could actually, that can spill out of control because if Turkey gets attacked and they're a NATO partner, then what the Article 5 that states inside NATO is that if one NATO partner is attacked, then all NATO partners must react. Do you really want to go inside Doha and actually try to take down the Qatari government? Because if a NATO partner is sitting inside Qatar, then what's the ramification? What's the blowback? What's the worst that's going to happen? And Saudi Arabia is a very fragile state, with many people who may be disenfranchised, who are looking for a political uprising but are afraid to do it because of the consequences. It only takes if anybody was to hit Saudi Arabia at this point, especially whether it's Aramco processing facility or even the capital of Mecca, or Riyadh, it can be a disaster for Saudi Arabia, which is why they won't send their guys into Yemen because too many soldiers get lost in there. You would have an uprising on your hands.
It was. All right. I didn't find the actual. I skimmed through the article. I didn't find where they said that what they were specifically were going to do, but I did find something else that is a juicy tidbit here. Some Gulf watchers speculate that the incentive for the planned invasion may have been partly financial. Saudi Arabia's cradle-to-grave welfare system relies on high oil prices, which plummeted in 2014 and have not fully recovered. Since the current king came to power in 2015, the country has spent more than a third of its 737 billion in reserves, and last year the Saudi economy entered a painful recession. In response, the government has looked for ways to raise money, including by selling shares of the state oil company Saudi Aramco. It's unsustainable, said Bruce Rydell, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institute and 30-year CIA official, in a lecture last November. In the 3 years since King Salman ascended to the throne, one third of Saudi Arabia's reserves have already been spent. You don't need to have an MBA from the Wharton School to figure out what this means 6 years from now. And also, I don't know why I forgot where I heard this from, that they were saying that this new king was spending money furiously on yachts and supercars and the sorts. Now, uh, go
His
ahead.
name is MBS.
Huh?
His name is MBS.
Oh yeah. MBS. He was spending money furiously, so people were looking at him like, okay, why spending this money and we in a deep recession? Um, also, the it also said that he arrested his uncles at a airport and he made them sign over their rights to their money to put money in the country's coffers to pay for the cradle to grave welfare system. Now, what I found interesting and really childish about all this was what's been going on. Um, okay, they're harassing Qatar. The UAE's harassment of Qatar also includes crude public insults lodged by UAE leadership against the Qatari royal family. The jibes frequently emanate from the verified Twitter account of Hamad Al Mazrou, a high-level Emirati intelligence official and right-hand man to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed. Masroui's account frequently tweets sexual, suggestive content directed at Moza bint Nazir, the mother of the Emir of Qatar. Just last week, Masrou tweeted a video of a man and woman with Masrou and Sheikha Moza's face photoshopped onto their bodies doing a raunchy bump and grind. The content and audacity of Masrou's tweet have led to speculation in Qatari media that the account is actually controlled by the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi himself. That's childish.
Well, it's a strategy to actually, a smear campaign, basically memes, right? They're using memes now. They're getting a little bit social media happy themselves. They need to do that in order to control the narrative, right? In order to get popular support, to go against, the Qatari officials.
Um, I don't know why I read this because I read so many articles about some type of things, some type of topic. But they were saying that one reason they were doing it was to get Qatar to try to attack them, so they can then have a reason as to why they went into Qatar to do what they really wanted to do. That's what I read somewhere. So
No,
they
Qatar would never attack anybody because they don't have the manpower to do so. They can't afford it.
mm,
That's why they need
very
terrorists to go
interesting.
to Syria and take down the Syrian government because they couldn't never do it but by themselves. They have some fancy hardware,
Now,
and
would you say? Go ahead.
no, they have some fancy hardware, very expensive stuff, but they're not that stupid to actually to do it to create an offensive. Most of their weapons are very defensive, not offensive.
Now, would you say, um, since when we read that Qatar purchased the S-400s from Russia, that this was a good reason as to why they purchased them?
I'll say that one more time.
Would you say? Remember, we went over. We read that Qatar purchased the S-400s from Russia. Would you say, since the article said that they've been feeling this bullying campaign from Saudi Arabia and UAE since last year, and recently purchased the S-400s? Would you say or agree or say something other that this could be a reason, a major reason why they purchased the S-400s from Russia?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're a small country like Qatar, I mean, you need all of the defenses that you can get, and nothing's more effective than the S-400 missile system right now. Until the S-500 comes out, they're not going to put that on there until like late 2020. But you would need a sophisticated system like that, because if Saudi Arabia does decide to perform an airstrike on you, you know, it could be cataclysmic for your country, because it's so small.
Right.
It's only about less than 500 miles all around. So it's about the size of Illinois, if not smaller.
Oh wow, that's yeah, okay. They really don't have nowhere to go to run in that size. All right. So it's our next topic, people. Our next topic comes from YouTube, specifically The Economist. The title of this video is Africa, Islamic State, Next Frontier. The Economist. That's just about 2 minute, 2 minute 50-second long video. And FYI, if you want to look at the same points in our docket, it's left down in the description. You can follow along or read it at your leisure after the show. In this video, they're basically saying, say the ISIS Islamic terrorists are defeated in the Middle East or run out of the strongholds in the Middle East, Africa could be a new frontier for them. Since, I mean, Paul says, since these countries, specifically countries in the Sahel region of Africa, more specifically Mauritania, Senegal, Mali, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, Chad, Sudan, and Eritrea is Muslim, has a high Muslim population. Um, well, not Muslim, but they go by the word of Islam. There are other, excuse me, there are other factions in Africa which side to either ISIS or Al Qaeda. More specifically, this ISWAP, Islamic State, West African province. You all have, I'm pretty sure, heard of Boko Haram, and the northeastern portion of Nigeria in the states of Yobe, Borno, and Adam, Adamawa. I mean, also the video also goes to East Africa, um, in the regions of Somalia, Eritrea, and I believe Djibouti, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to misspeak, but this is scary business in terms of black African people that can devastate Africa, since Africa is pegged to be the new frontier. That now you have all of these Islamic ISIS slash Al Qaeda forces coming into Africa, terrorizing people. I don't like this at all. Any other
Well,
points?
the main contributors, if you look at your video, is the ones who actually caused all the problems in the first place. If they didn't bomb Libya, they wouldn't have a lot of these problems. If they didn't bomb Mogadishu, they wouldn't have a lot of these problems. If they didn't disrupt you know, the political process inside Egypt as well as Tunisia, they wouldn't have a lot of these problems. So most of their problems are actually coming from European Western colonial states. And the same Western colonial states that created these problems also have a solution to go in there and actually clear it out. However, it's more about reoccupying Africa, and they know that the Russians and the Chinese are in Africa, making their biggest investments, and they want to clear out the Chinese and protect Western capitalism inside Africa, or at least European capitalism inside Africa, where they extract all the resources out and collect all the wealth and leave Africans in poverty. this has to stop at some point. And I think what you're starting to see is more private military firms, corporations start to pop up in Africa, um, such as the Executive Group and Blackwater, which is Academy now. They have a air base inside um, Libya that they've been operating for the last couple of years. Um, you also have the United States military inside with the Green Berets inside Central Africa, through Niger and as well as the other francophone states. Um, more more other entities are starting to get involved as well because as China and Russia and the rest of the eastern states start to prop up with the BRICS inside Africa and they start to develop it, there's an objective to actually slow down this process by facilitating the resources for the supposed terrorists and actually come in there and create the solution by going in there and bombing everything. And that's not going to work. If you think you're going to bomb Chinese infrastructure after they just built it, that's going to cause a major rift.
Mm.
What's going on, Intergravity?
Answer, how you doing today, Answer Gravity?
Hey, what's up, guys? How you guys doing?
Well, yourself, how you doing today?
Man, I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
That's
I kind
good.
of missed the last part of what you guys talking about. What is this the article with Rex Tillerson, or is it a different article?
That's a different article. We just went over the one with Rex Tillerson. With this one, it is the Economist video, the video on YouTube from the Economist YouTube channel, and the title of the video was "Africa Islamic State's Next Frontier." What they were saying was that when if ISIS were to get defeated or move from their strongholds in the Middle East, such in Syria, Iran, Iraq, those regions, that they could move to Africa, more specifically the Sahel region, and the countries of Mauritania, Senegal, Mali, excuse me, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, and such. You see such instances in Nigeria, in northeast Nigeria, and the Boko Haram, and you have other factions in Africa, in Somalia, Eritrea, that hold ties to Al Qaeda and ISIS.
Oh, okay, I see. Uh, then in that case, I would say Mike's assessment is correct. The only thing I would add is that Islam has been in Africa since its inception. So I don't see that changing anytime soon. As far as the extremism goes, the more development that happen inside
Breaking
the
up a little
country.
bit.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Hello, is that me?
Can you hear me? I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hello, hello.
I can hear you, Anti-Gravity.
Oh, okay. It must be a line now then. Yeah, I was just, what was I saying? Yeah, with more development, more infrastructure, um, increase in people's standards of living, a lot of this will go down, especially if they're able to prevent, subversions, being overthrown, coups, backed by Europe. As long as there's stability, there won't be any of this kind of stuff happening because the leaders will have a vested interest in um, keeping their country stable. Like for example, with Libya, the the migrant crisis happened. Well, actually, Gaddafi warned that if you take me out, you'll see a sea of what do you say? Sea of migrants, and that's exactly what happened. But as long as he was there, it's not like people weren't trying to get to Europe this entire time. It's just that he was the one stopping it. But as soon as he was gone, chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. And they knew that, so they planned that strategically. However, a lot of those supposed terrorists that coming out of the Islamic State is actually being found inside Afghanistan, um, and they're starting to repopulate. So we saw last week that we reported that Israel actually funneled out quite a few these white helmets, who are supposed to be, the Red Cross of Syria, and it turns out that these guys are really terrorists with white helmets on, being funded by the British government MI6, as well as Turkey's MIT, which is their version of the CIA. Um, so they had £100 million or $100 million in funding, and Israel funneled these guys out, and now all of a sudden, these guys are being found inside Afghanistan, outside of Kabul, creating havoc
Right.
inside Afghanistan and making their way up into Russia, and they have now reestablished themselves as the Islamic State of Uzbekistan.
Right. Yeah, and the U.S. Effectively, no, it wasn't just it was John Kerry, I believe, in a Senate hearing. He basically admitted that the United States created, ISIS. So even the Taliban is against ISIS. So that tells you how extreme they are in terms of ideology.
Wow.
So the Taliban is not really a global terror organization. They just want like control over Afghanistan. So they have a vested interest in not drawing too much heat to themselves. They already have enough problems.
Well, they're actually fighting ISIS right now, or Islamic State of West Uzbekistan, and these various factions such as Al Qaeda. So you have Al Qaeda, you have the Islamic State, and then you have Taliban, all vying for territory inside Afghanistan. And
Right.
I think
Right.
the Taliban controls something like 40 to 49% of the country legally.
Yeah,
Well,
actually,
not
they were
legally.
they were in talks with the Kabul government, I believe, recently, maybe a few months back, of negotiating a ceasefire and a transitional government. But then when ISIS came in, that kind of overthrew that. Now it's back to fighting.
Well, they're getting a lot of support. They're getting a lot of support from Pakistan, as well as Iran. So there's a lot of flood of armory resources into Afghanistan to support the Taliban against against the insurgents of the NATO alliance, as well as the Americans in particular, to keep these guys from overtaking Afghanistan. Because if Afghanistan gets taken over completely by the Americans and they're able to hold it, then what that does is it puts up a bulwark against China, as well as the rest of the SCO members for the Belt and Road Initiative through Afghanistan.
Right. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. That's kind of the hidden thing that isn't really talked about, but the Taliban actually gets a lot of their weapons from either Russia or China.
You said they get their weapons from Russia and China?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
Chinese governments have also been selling arms in Syria as well to get in on that as well.
Right. There's a company called Norinco that makes Kalashnikovs, um, and other small arms as well. They sell big arms too, but those are the smallest arms that they do sell is Kalashnikovs, and they've been found distributed in distribution to places like the Taliban, or in places like the Syrian government, through these private military corporations called the I forget which brigade that it is. I know the Palestinians have their own brigade, which is called Liwa al Quds. Um, they're one of the strongest brigades inside Syria, taking very few casualties as well.
All right. All right. Good show so far. Good show so far. Excuse me. Let's get on to our next topic on the docket. This was another YouTube video titled Akon Tells Africans It's Time to Rebrand the Continent's Image. This video is about 2 minutes and 44 seconds long, but in the video, straightforward to the point, what he's saying is Africa needs to obviously rebrand its image. Um, the images that are coming out of Africa and being fed to the world, more specifically, I say Black Americans in America, is a landscape of poverty, destitute, fearfulness, land of you just don't go to. But in all actuality, Africa is has an abundance of so many things, minerals, riches of all the sorts. Also, what he pointed out in the video was you have images of Africa. He pointed out Kenya where someone went into the mall, shot up the mall, and the world's media outlets spent so much time on that. But in America, even though you may hear uh, not a lot of press on terrorism attacks in America, he pointed, I don't know if this number is accurate. He said there's been 25,000 terrorist attacks in America in the past few years. I don't know if that's accurate or not. I don't know if he said that to give a stark a stark difference of the terrorist attacks that you don't hear in America. But also in the last of the video, he made the Jesus reference. He said, these people tell you Jesus is white and you believe it. So uh, that part, I'm pretty sure he's going to receive some flack from that, more specifically from Africans. But what he's saying is true. Africa does need to rebrand itself because a large part of Africans live outside of the continent, and B, portions, excuse me, great portions of those large part of Africans hold a lot of wealth that can then be invested into Africa in different regional, geographical regions of Africa and countries in Africa. So he's right in this. I'm with him on this. Africa does need to rebrand itself. Master Law?
Oh,
Okay, okay.
yeah, I would also say that African Americans need to rebrand themselves. I
Agree.
mean, part of the reason why we have the Black Brain Trust is a rebranding of the intellectualism of black men in particular, but black people as a whole. So we're rebranding ourselves with this channel, and we're bringing content out that is actually more purposeful and more meaningful to the greater masses. Um, it's a shame that so many other channels and platforms don't have the ability to be more diverse in their content. But here we try to be as diverse as possible and deliver a better product coming out of the intellectualism.
Mm-hmm. I wholeheartedly agree. You have any comments on this, Anti?
I think the 25,000 he was referring to maybe is like he's including like school shootings, gun violence.
Well, yeah.
I think maybe that.
If you include all that,
Anything greater than three people being shot at a time is considered a mass shooting or terrorist attack.
well, you're okay. Then that 25,000 is much more believable.
The only thing is, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that Chicago makes up the bulk of it.
Mm.
Oh, right. The only thing I would say is that this was a good video. He's saying some good stuff, but the thing is, I don't trust Akon. I'm not quite sure why, but I feel like there's something else going on. Because I was reading a report that, where he was doing the free electricity
Mm-hmm.
program, a lot of the farmers and the people whose plots, the electricity towers were going through had to sign contracts with a Chinese company.
Oh.
And so if they weren't able to pay, I think, like the rent for it or something like that, or the electricity bill, they would have to sign over their land.
To the
I can't.
Chinese.
Yeah. So I feel like maybe he's a front for Chinese companies, but I can't really verify it at the moment. So I have to still look into it.
Now we've been hearing these stories within the past few months that have been coming out of China going to different places that this Belt and Road Initiative is going through and offering them this free, quote unquote, free money, which is really not free. They have to pay it back. And if they can't pay it back, they default on this loan, then China will just take the land. And China is doing this in African countries where, okay, we're going to build this electricity, but if obviously a lot of these people that own these farms and plots of land, they are, poor in the first place. So the moment excuse me, the moment they can't pay their rent or their tax on the land, China's going to come in and swoop up all the land and multiply this by years. Then you're looking at China owning a good portion, a significant portion of land in different African countries. I don't like this trend.
Well, that's. I just want to go back 1 second and talk about Akon's energy
Hmm.
product project. But so those solar panels that were deployed were ones that were banned from the United States because the Obama administration had put severe tariffs on solar panels coming into the United States at the time when Obama was supporting his bedfellow company, Solyndra, if I remember correctly. Um, so there was a stockpile of solar panels that were sitting in warehouses inside China that needed to be redeployed, and Acon became the perfect middleman to subsidize these panels into western part of Africa um, as a part of an infrastructure project. And from what I understand, that those street lights and solar panels that went up were actually very successful in brought energy to places that did not have energy at all. They've never seen energy being provided to them. So there was no real physical infrastructure to put in place prior to that. So I would say kudos to Acon on the ability to get that project up and going and getting the $2 billion um, yuan credit from the Chinese government to actually purchase these panels and create the infrastructure project. I think that's things that we should be doing as well in terms of infrastructure, not just in Africa, but also we could do something similar in the United States.
Hmm.
So do you think I should hold off on that judgment
Yeah,
until further information?
yeah, I would definitely hold off on that because a lot of the time people are not very um, they always have these suspicions about celebrities coming in and doing things, and no one ever says Madonna or these other celebrities, white celebrities coming into Africa and doing and being benevolent. No one ever says anything about them. But as soon as it's Akon, everybody has something to say. And I
Right.
think some of his projects that I've heard him speak about are actually are actually beneficial.
Okay.
I'd rather
I
get
would
the,
just
I'd rather
say,
I
go
just
ahead.
want to say I'd rather get the infrastructure up and going first, and then worry about the backlash of what it is, because infrastructure is more important than the rumors.
Okay, I see. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I'm wary of whether it's Akon or whoever else, or any of these celebrities. Doing projects in Africa. Until I see more evidence. But from what you say, it looks like Akon's doing some good work.
All
Maybe
right.
those most other articles were unfounded in their criticisms.
All right. Excuse me. All right. Let's get to our next article on the docket. This one is a shorter article. This one comes from Reuters.com. Title: Russia says will ditch U.S. securities amid sanctions. RIA, written by Andrew Osruka. Title: Moscow. Russia will further decrease its holdings of U.S. securities in response to new sanctions against Moscow, but has no plans to shut down U.S. companies in Russia. Finance Minister Anton Selonov said on state TV on Sunday, RIA news agency reported. On Friday, Prime Minister Dmitry excuse me,
Medvedev.
Medvedev, I saw those V's and I got confused. Said Russia would regard any U.S. move to curb the activities of its banks as a declaration of economic war and would take retaliatory action. Washington said on Wednesday it would impose fresh sanctions by the end of August after it determined that Moscow had used a nerve agent against a former Russian agent and his daughter in Britain, sending Russia's ruble currency to a 2-year low. Speaking on the weekly TV talk show, Sulanov said the new U.S. sanctions, some of which could restrict purchases of Russian government bonds, were unpleasant but not fatal. We have lowered to the minimum level and will further decrease our investment in the U.S. economy, in the U.S. securities, Sulanov said, shedding light on the nature of an unexpected drop in Russia's holdings of U.S. Treasury bonds. Russia has ditched its holdings of U.S. Treasuries in the past few months as relations between Moscow and Washington have deteriorated, data showed last month. Russia will also move more subtle, Russia will also move more settlement in rubles and other currencies, such as the euro, than in dollar, Sudanov said. Eventually, this will negatively impact U.S. investors, but we are not planning now any limitations such as shutting down McDonald's, mm, Sudanov said. He preferred the calls by some lawmakers to shut down prominent U.S. companies in Russia, starting from 2014, when relations with the West soured over Russia's annexation of Crimea and its role in Ukraine's crisis. Our citizens work in these companies. These companies pay taxes into the budget of our country, Sulanov said, while admitting that U.S. sanctions would boost inflation in Russia as they hurt the ruble. Sulanov said there were no plans to ban using the dollar in Russia. Of course, the government has no such plans. There would be a step to an impasse. All right. Um, any comments on this one?
Yeah, Russia's taking the gloves off at this point. They're slowly starting to wean their way off the dollar, even though they themselves have admitted last week that they intend on keep using the dollar as is necessary for doing business. But they're slowly starting to wean themselves off the West as they start to drop their securities, as well as they start to drop the dollar as well within their own country. But they'll use it for international trade, but won't use it in their own country.
Hmm. Any comments on this answer?
I agree with Mike. I think this is a good setup for once they start launching their national cryptocurrency.
Now, with the cryptocurrency, I'm sure Dollar Will can chime in on this, but with the cryptocurrency, people has been saying that, and I saw the video you sent out to Mike with the Kaiser report that Bitcoin can and maybe will be the next reserve country. Now, we said on our economics hangout that it may not be Bitcoin, it can be some other currency, but nevertheless, even if it is a cryptocurrency and it's deemed as the world reserve currency where other countries use it for trade with other currencies, I I wonder what will that do to the U.S. economy, since we all know that the U.S. dollar is a world reserve currency. And we know if you, as a country, are your currency is the world reserve currency, then you are always going to run a deficit. You're always going to be in a deficit, and a crypto replace your currency as a world reserve currency. And I don't know, I'm getting to the economics, but geopolitically speaking, I'm wondering what will that do? Will that what will that do to the U.S. economy? And B, if it negatively impacts the U.S. economy, then other nations such as Russia, China, and other world powers, will they then take a jab and try to not specifically attack, but put their foot on the neck of of the U.S. geopolitically speaking?
Not necessarily. They'll let it decay on its own because Trump's doing a great job at these tariffs. You know, with China and the European Union, that it doesn't. You don't really need much to devalue the currency and isolate the United States because Trump is doing that on his own through isolation policy.
Hmm.
Uh, and now you're starting to see Turkey actually put tariffs on U.S. goods as well. Now, you know, Turkey only does something to the effect of a couple of $billion in trade between the United States and itself, as what they do 3 or 4 times that much with Europe in the Far East. So a lot of their GDP is based on doing business out east, because everything is happening out east now. Whether it's India, whether it's China, Japan, South Korea, Russia, especially because Russia is a energy superpower, the largest in the world. Um, you, you know, Russia really doesn't need the dollar anymore. In the next few years, it won't matter. Um, Using a cryptocurrency will be the means of transaction for doing business. They've set up the system called the SPF, which is what the Venezuelan petro is built off of, or designed off of. The Russians had actually designed the Venezuelan petro, and they're designing the same thing for themselves as well as Iran because of the sanctions. And I just saw an article, I think this morning or maybe the other day, talking about Cuba actually participating now in cryptocurrencies as well.
Wow.
Right. If you want to look at a real life example of what happens when you get knocked off from being the world reserve currency, you just have to look at the British Empire. They were a little bit smarter. I don't know if the U.S. will, retreat as gracefully or be able to weather it as gracefully as they did. It just means the end of the American Empire. It doesn't mean the end of America, but just no more of their military adventures around the world because they
Yeah,
won't have the money.
yeah. That's why I was getting at. I didn't. I don't know if it came off that way. I didn't mean the end of America, but their rule in the waters and across the not the country, but the world of having these U.S. military bases across the country. That's not the country, the world. And
Yeah, yeah. No, I know. I mean, basically, when as the U.S. declines, the rest of the countries in the world or some of the countries in the world are gonna start rising. I see that in Africa happening.
okay.
Well, they're gaining momentum at this point, and the U.S. is losing momentum. All of the factories are closing. Ford isn't going to make subcompact cars anymore after 2020. That's a done deal. Your coal miners, those plants are shut down. Um, the U.S. isn't competing in IT services anymore. India, China, and South Korea are dominant in this area, and Russia as well. Moscow has a very strong IT base for themselves, very comparative now to that of India. Um, it's just one thing after the other for the United States in terms of their global dominance is starting to wane. They're basically on life support at this point.
Hmm. All right, all right. Good stuff, good stuff. Let's get to our next item on the docket. This is from RT.com. Title: Russian military repels two drone attacks on Khmeimim base in Syria. Published August 12th. Article goes: two drones were launched by militants at Russia's Khmeimim base in Syria in the last 24 hours. Russia's defense ministry said, quote, the targets were destroyed by anti-aircraft fire at a safe distance from the base, end quote, the military said. There were no injuries or material damage as a result of the incidents, with the Khmeimim airfield operating in a routine manner. It was the 10th drone attack against a Russian base in Syria since the start of the year, the defense ministry added. All right, so we have drone attacks being recently to Russia's Khmeimim Air Force base in Syria, and at the end it says it was the 10th drone attack since the start of the year. So we have there's some action going on there. My question to you all: who do you think it could be, or multiple people it could be, and what does this say? Um, should we look more? Should we put more into this, or is it just standard business or standard business practice?
Well, it's important. It's an important attack because they're testing Russia's reflexes in terms of security. Who it could be Turkish militants, it could be um, American bedfellows such as Israel. It could be coming from Cyprus, or it could be coming off of U.S. warships inside the Mediterranean. There's a variety of places where it could have come from. These drones have been largely toys for the most part. These are DJI drones that you commonly see at Best Buy being sold, for $500 and $600 on the market. These drones can actually be weaponized, so you can take a drone and actually put a uh, a a rocket propelled grenade on it and actually detonate it, via the drone itself. So the drone is mostly just a delivery vehicle and not so much as an attack machine. But the drones do have greater capabilities if you do a few modifications to it. So it could actually be backpacked and actually used to go a further distance than what it typically would have. And Russia's reflexes are proving that Russia is paying attention to everything, and they pretty much can get a geospatial map of where these devices are coming from and who operated them based on electronic sweeping with their cyber capabilities.
When you say electronic sweeping, what do you mean by that?
So they have oscilloscopes and other types of devices that could actually um, capture any sort of radio broadcast that comes out within the vicinity. So what happens with these devices is that they can scan a given radius and know which cell phone um, is, uh, is broadcasting what other type of devices are broadcasting, such as tablets and smartphones and things of that nature. So they can disseminate between the varying devices and tell which one is which and where it's coming from.
Okay, okay. Any comments on this, Anti?
I wonder if it's actually Israel, backing this kind of test. Um, I don't know what the dynamic between them and Russia is at the moment, because Russia is not going to stop backing Syria, so kind of puts them in a quagmire.
Yeah, Russia's in it for the long haul. They signed a 99-year lease with the Syrian government recently, I think in March, are on the ports of Tartus, as well as the Khamenei air base that just suffered a drone attack. Um, they're basically trying to show, and I'm saying I'm saying the adversaries are just trying to show that they can get inside Russian airspace or Syrian airspace without being detected. In reality, they can detect it. They can just make a decision at the very last moment whether or not to shoot a missile at it or to use a electronic gun on it to actually bring the drone down safely, to examine its internals to see who made it and where it came from.
All right, all right. Okay, let's get to our next article here. Oops, I forgot. I stopped the screen share. All right. Next article comes from livescience.com. Titled, China just tested a hypersonic weapon that could launch nukes at 6 times the speed of sound. Written by Brandon Spector, August 8th. Article goes, China successfully tested a hypersonic aircraft on Friday, August 3rd, one that could one day be capable of firing nuclear weapons around the planet at up to 6 times the speed of sound, according to China's state-run news site China Daily. The aircraft, known as Starry Sky 2, is reportedly capable of screaming across the sky at speeds up to 4,563 miles per hour or 7,344 kilometers per hour, and rapidly switching direction mid-flight. China Daily reported, potentially allowing the rocket to blast right past existing missile defense systems. Video of the Starry Sky 2 test launch which was conducted in an undisclosed location in northwestern China, showed the aircraft being launched into space on a multi stage rocket. The aircraft then separated from its launcher and continued flying on its own power, soaring at about Mach 5.5, 5.5 times the speed of sound, for 400 seconds, China data reported. The aircraft then performed several maneuvers at an altitude of about 18 miles or 29 kilometers before landing in a designated target zone, a demonstration that witnesses heralded as a huge success, according to a statement quoted in the South China Morning Post. Starry Sky 2, which is being developed by the China Academy of Aerospace Aerodynamics in Beijing, is an example of Wave Rider vehicle. As the name suggests, wave riders are sleek, narrow-shaped planes built to glide along the pressure waves creating, created by their own supersonic lift, essentially allowing the aircraft to surf on shock waves. Wave riders are thus able to maintain impressive hypersonic speeds of Mach 5 or above, which while making rapid mid-air changes in trajectory, making them particularly difficult for current missile defense systems to thwart. While the technology is still likely years away from being ready for use in a combat setting, Chinese military expert Song Yongping told China Global News that the successful test puts China shoulder to shoulder with the US and Russia in the development of hypersonic striking systems. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced in March that his country's military was hard at work on a hypersonic weapon codenamed Avangard, which he claimed was capable of reaching speeds of Mach 20 and could be ready for deployment as soon as 2020. The U.S., meanwhile, is also eagerly developing its own hypersonic weaponry, including a hypersonic missile capable of being launched from a warplane. The American defense company Lockheed Martin revealed in June that they had been granted nearly $100 million contract to develop the missile for the U.S. Air Force. Hypersonic missiles. Um, this is impressive. They can build this type of technology, and B, it's very scary in a certain way. Um, you will not see or hear this thing coming. That's all I have to say about it.
Well, we saw last week. I think we reported that the Russians were working hard at work on a supersonic missile that can take out warships,
Hmm.
and that that missile flies at such a high rate of speed that even the warships can't keep up. And
Right.
that also changes trajectory as well on the fly. Um, it skims across water at 3 feet above the water, so it's kind of hard for a ship to actually counteract that. When you start talking about hypersonic missiles, you're talking about something that can't be heard either. By the time you hear it, it's too late for you to even react. Um, Russia has already had developed Mach 20 base hypersonic missiles. So now that Russia has developed them and China is also involved, China also has something called a DF-20. I know you can look that up.
Yeah, you said
DF-20,
DF-20?
yeah, DF-20, DF-20 is also a hypersonic missile system that skims LEO, which is low Earth orbit, to avoid missile, not just missile detection, but any sort of interception from a surface to air missile that the United States would even have.
Now, I think the search engine is confusing it with a regular engine. Um,
No, DF-20 missile.
oh, missile.
I think it's called Dongfeng or something like that.
Let's see here. China's carrier killer. Let's do this one. Fastest missile in the world. Okay. Here we go. Let's see. This video is dated 2014. Video is pretty grainy.
You might want to go to another video then.
Yeah.
If you go backwards into the search, I think it's the second one that might be more.
China new M20 short range tactical missile system.
No, that's not it. It should be the second. Should be the third one I meant. Sorry.
Okay, defending. All right. Defending against China's DF-21D carrier killer missile. All right, prepare with this. Okay. So this thing looks like this thing changes in midair, changes your trajectory in midair. Just
Correct.
like the missiles that we were recently reading about.
Correct.
And it's specifically designed for carriers.
Right, because it's made to take out battle groups.
Okay.
Because typically an aircraft carrier doesn't roll alone. It rolls with other
yeah, frigate,
destroyers, corvettes.
Yeah.
How effective are rail guns against it?
You would need to know that it's even coming.
I see.
Okay, so since these things are traveling at least Mach 1, how does radar fare against them?
Well, radar would pick up something. It knows that something's up there, but where it's coming, I mean, it doesn't know how to determine an object moving at that speed as to what the next countermeasures need to be. It just knows that something is up there.
All right. And by the time the countermeasures are prepared and shot, hopefully in the right direction, it could be too late. And we're just talking about the Mach 1 speed. We just recently read, Mach 5.5 and Mach 20. Then a Mach 20 missile comes out, a country will have to upgrade their military defenses to a point to counteract this Mach 20.
There's nothing you can do about it. An object coming at that speed is impossible to hit. Now you can hit a Mach 1 if you can get a better idea from your satellites where it's launched from and so on and so forth. You can get a better mapping of where a Mach 1 device is coming from. But something that's moving at Mach 20, that's like trying to shoot down a meteor, or not a meteor, but an asteroid. You're not going to do that. And keep in mind that these missiles don't hit on impact. They hit before they even hit their
target.
So they hit the vicinity, but not the actual target. And when you're talking about moving nuclear devices or nuclear warheads, and that China, from that piece you just read, China has at least 5 or 6 warheads inside there. You have to figure out which warhead is actually the authentic warhead, or is it the dummy warhead? You don't have that type of time to actually make up that determination.
Wow. Any more comments on this answer?
Yeah, I think this goes more to China's use of asymmetric warfare. This kind of going against the United States. Having large carrier, not carrier. Well, what are those ones called where they travel in 11 battle groups?
Yes. Yeah, that's what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
The 5th and 6th fleet.
Yeah, instead of having these fleets, I don't think China has any large carrier groups, but they'll use these kind of technology to take out the U.S. if they ever get into kind of a direct confrontation.
China has 1 carrier group.
Oh, they do? Okay.
They're working on a second one right now. Should be ready by next summer.
And the carriers are bigger than U.S. carriers.
No, their carriers are much smaller than U.S. carriers.
Which one? Okay, so is it Russia's carriers that are, excuse me, bigger than the U.S. carriers?
No one has a bigger carrier than the United States.
I'm pretty sure I heard somebody say that. I don't know if I'm mixing that with Russia their submarine or not.
No, their submarines are Russian submarines are top notch.
Okay, I must be thinking about Russian submarines that are bigger than American submarines.
They're more silent, so you can't hear them, and they have longer range.
Okay, all right. Let's get to our next article on our docket. This one comes from PressTV.com. Title: Turkish president says Libra crash, political plot against Ankara. Written Sunday, August 12th. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said that Libra's drop is a political plot against Ankara and that his country will begin to seek for new partners. The Lira's crash was sparked by a disagreement with the United States over the detention of an American pastor in Turkey, which was even brought up questions which has even brought up questions over future partnership between Washington and Ankara. The Turkey's currency dropped some 16% to new record lows against the dollar on Friday. The aim of the operation is to make Turkey surrender in all areas, from finance to politics, said Erdogan on Sunday. We are once again facing a political underhand plot. With God's permission, we will overcome this, he said. Erdogan noted that his country would turn to other partners if this economic war goes on. Some close the doors and some others open new ones. Some close the doors and some others open new ones, he said. He further added that the only response to a country which chooses to sacrifice its strategic partnership and a half-century alliance with a state with a population 81 million for the sake terrorist groups is goodbye. You dare to sacrifice 81 million Turkey for a priest who is linked to terrorist group? He stressed. Relations between the two NATO allies have taken a turn for the worse amid dispute over the detention of Turkey of U.S. evangelical pastor Andrew Brunson on terrorist charges. They tell us to release the priest by Wednesday 6 p.m. Otherwise, the sanctions will begin, Erdogan added. On Friday, U.S. President Donald Trump announced two double steel and aluminum tariffs on Turkey, saying relations between Washington and Ankara not good as tensions mount between the two countries. I have just authorized a doubling of tariffs on steel and aluminum with respect to Turkey as their currency. The Turkish lira slides rapidly downward against our very strong dollar, Trump said on Twitter. Aluminum will now be 20% and steel 50%. Our relations with Turkey are not good at this time, he added. The United States is the world's biggest steel importer. Washington slapped tariffs on 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum in March for imports from several countries, including Turkey. Trump's announcement came shortly after President Erdogan called on Turks to help defend the country against the U.S. launched economic war against his nation. Erdogan appealed to Turks to exchange dollars for gold for Turkish lira in support of to support the plunging currency. Ankara and Washington also disagree over their military interventions in the Syria war. Turkey plans to buy missile defense systems from Russia, and the U.S. conviction of a Turkish state bank executive on sanction busting charges in January. On Saturday, Erdogan warned his country's partnership with the United States might be in jeopardy as tensions intensify between the two NATO allies. All right. Wow. These two countries are butting heads with each other. Trump is continuing to put tariffs on everything, which lead me to believe that more countries are going to start to push toward a crypto as the world reserve currency because of the way America is acting, and also, um, yeah, that's all my 2 points about this article.
Yeah, I think this is just. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
You go right ahead.
This is just the next step in the U.S. Pushing away basically all the countries in the world. So this is just going to push Turkey away from the West and NATO towards the BRICS and doing business with Africa and Asia. So this is just, I guess this makes it easier for Turkey to wean itself off of the dollar as well, same as Russia.
Right, and I mentioned earlier that uh, Turkey actually does less business with the United States than the rest of the East. So most of their GDP is coming from doing business with places like Russia, places like China, and places like South Korea, as well as the European Union as a whole. I think that makes up the bulk of their GDP. Um, so cutting the U.S. off is not really all that bad. And Erdogan actually mentioned in particular that he's going to drop Apple from coming into the country as well. So high tariffs on Apple goods coming in, and that he's going to take on more Samsung devices, so more Samsung Galaxies and everything else. And he mentioned it specifically yesterday morning. So this sounds like he's going to war with all of America, not just the political structure, but the actual economic electronic structure as well.
Right. This is always the risk of engaging in tariffs and trade wars because they always escalate. So this is just another escalation.
Mm-hmm. All right.
This actually works out better for Turkey because it forces them to be more innovative now. Now they have to make their own products, and now they have to make their own vehicles. So now they don't have to buy or rely on American based vehicles because for the most part, American-based vehicles are the most reliable in the Middle East, from my understanding. Your Chevy Silverados and your Tahoes and Yukons and things of that nature, your Ford F-150s and things like that are considered to be very reliable. And it could be just because of the environment as well.
They could shift to Toyota though. I know the Toyota pickup truck is very popular among terrorists because of its reliability. So in that region, specifically because of the difficult terrain, Toyota might, fare better.
They could, you can also throw in Hyundai as well as Mitsubishi, um, other European manufacturers as well, such as Renault, Mercedes. Mercedes does make quite a few pickup trucks as well.
I see that eventually, I won't say Toyota, Turkey is going to leave the EU, the NATO. Maybe not right now, but maybe in like 10 to 15 years. I see NATO breaking off. They've already butted heads with Germany. I think Germany even banned, maybe not the president, but they kicked out the ambassadors and their diplomats. And Turkey responded in the same. So they have a lot of butting heads, and now it's the U.S. I feel eventually they're going to get tired of NATO and leave.
Get tired of NATO and leave. Well, NATO, Turkey is supposed to be the head of NATO. It's supposed to be shifting from from Europe into Turkey by late 2020 or mid 2020. So I think the objective with the coup attempt was to get rid of Erdogan now, so that you can bring the head of NATO into Turkey and actually have a solidified position. Because if the objective for Turkey at some point was to join and link up with Russia, and take a more aggressive stance against Russia by bringing NATO's head into Turkey, then your plot has already been spoiled by this new relationship between Turkey and Russia, as well as Turkey and Iran, which are two nation states that typically never got along, but have a greater interest at this point, due to the unforeseen conditions between the deterioration of the United States, the relationship wise.
Right. That's why they're so interested in this priest guy. The U.S. doesn't give a damn about a priest. That's their asset in Turkey, so they're trying to get him out.
Hmm.
Yeah, right. Turkey doesn't care about the priest, but United States actually wants him because he's a CIA operative, including his wife. His wife is actually CIA as well.
Right.
So
No, no. I was saying the U.S. doesn't care about priests, but they care about
right.
this priest because he's
Okay, right. He's a pastor, right? So his whole objective was to come in and stir up trouble inside Turkey, and he got caught in the whirlwind. And Turkish MIT, which is their version of the CIA, actually caught him and are basically holding him for ransom. So this pastor guy is to Turkey what Snowden is to Russia, and Gulen is to the United States with the rest of those other former two words that I just mentioned. So everybody has a piece on the chessboard, and they're not going to give it up, um, especially if especially if Julian Assange lives long enough in the next few months. It doesn't get put on the street. He probably has a whirlwind of information that he can release out about this pastor.
Oh,
right. I wouldn't doubt if he has a dead man switch. That if they take him out, he's gonna drop everything on the internet.
Oh, you mean Julian Assange?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's supposed to be, his health is kind of deteriorating for obvious reasons. I mean, he doesn't move around enough inside that little embassy.
all right. Let's get to our last article, then we'll open it up for open mic. This article comes from SputnikNews.com. Title: Maduro plans to create agency for fight against Colombian terrorism. Written um, August the 12th. Article: Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has revealed plans to establish a new security service that will be in charge of countering terrorist activities allegedly orchestrated by Colombia. Quote, I have asked the Defense Ministry for recommendations to create a new security service department for protection of our people from Colombian terrorism, end quote. Maduro told a state-run TV broadcaster on Sunday. The relations between the two neighboring countries have been strained. They escalated further after the August 4th assassination attempt of Maduro, in which the president was unharmed and seven Venezuelan soldiers sustained injuries. Caracas accused Bogota, particularly Colombian ex-president Juan Manuel Santos, of having a role in the attack. Moreover, Venezuela said it would put blame on Colombia for any future attack on its territory. The Colombian Foreign Ministry denied any involvement of Bogota in the assassination attempt on Maduro. All right, a few months ago, I want to say 2 months ago, we saw that NATO had invited Colombia to NATO, which was odd because due to Colombia's geopolitical location, it didn't seem it don't seem to fit NATO. And we know that Venezuela are trying to take themselves off the U.S. dollar, and they have a crypto backed by oil. Is oil, and they hold a large percentage of the world's oil supply or world's oil reserves. And what we speculate is what NATO is trying to do. The U.S. through NATO is fight a proxy war with Colombia. I mean, by using Colombia, fight a war with Venezuela by using Colombia, and that's what we're seeing now with this foil assassination attempt and this fighting between the two countries, which are right next door to each other.
Right, it's to put a wedge in not so much as Venezuela, but actually the rest of Latin America. Because if you look at Colombia on the map, Colombia sits in the middle of all of these all of these adversaries to the United States and possible adversaries to the United States. We know that China has set up a military base inside Uruguay. Um, and we know that China also has a space depot inside inside Argentina. Brazil is actually next door to Venezuela. Um, Ecuador is actually a wild card that can actually put up a fight in case something was to happen within that region. They can actually defend themselves pretty well against
Right.
Colombia, right? So when you're looking at that map, you see that Brazil being the largest player by geography also has a lot of wetlands inside these Amazonian areas, and that's probably something the Gone can actually speak to if he's in the chat, if he can get on the panel. Um, what would happen is that if you put NATO inside Latin America, then what that does is it makes everything else hostile.
Mm.
So now Venezuela is gonna put troops on its border. Brazil is gonna start sending up troops in areas that they can stand because a lot of the areas up north are actually uninhabited
Amazon.
by
Right.
rainforests. Um, and then you take into consideration that Ecuador is right next door, and Nicaragua is right. It's only a few hours away. Um, this causes a lot of problems because Nicaragua and Venezuela do have a pact with each other because they're former communist powers from the Soviet Union era. Um, and then you have Cuba. Cuba is a part of that whole entire triangle because a lot of operations and command comes out of Havana for Latin America, which makes it difficult for the United States to do business because other Latin American countries have basically told the United States to go take a hike. If Cuba can't come, then you can't come either. So the United States had to make concessions by opening up relations with Cuba before Castro died with Obama. So that's why it was such a diplomatic, um, strategic partnership between United States and Havana.
All right. Now, looking at the map, we see South America here. Well, we've been reading to give you all a visualization of the countries. You have Venezuela here at the top, very top. Caracas there. Then you off to the left, you have Colombia, Bogota, and the few countries that we mentioned, Ecuador, which is to the southwest of Colombia. Then Brazil occupies the largest landmass in South America, and the northern part of Brazil's Amazonian rainforest shared by Peru. As you can see, the state in Brazil called State of Amazonas. Um, and yeah, those were the main countries we're talking about. Then we mentioned Nicaragua, which is a few countries up. You got to go through Panama and Costa Rica to get to Nicaragua. And of course, you know where Cuba is, 90 miles off the coast of Key West, Florida.
Yeah. Also, let's not forget that Bolivia is also hostile towards the U.S.
Yeah,
Really? Okay.
just about all the countries are hostile towards the United States.
And Trump's kind of policy against Latin America has actually really pissed off all of the countries, even though they themselves don't really have anything to do with it because not many people are walking from Peru to the United States, but just kind of the feel has really angered them. Kind of because the U.S. has overthrown, had done coups in basically every country in Latin America. So I think their only allies in this region is Panama and Colombia, and possibly Brazil. But Brazil, not as much.
Yeah,
Breaking
Brazil's
up.
a wild card.
But for sure, they have Panama in their pocket. But who knows for how long?
Yeah, Panama is not a strong state. The only thing they have in Panama is the canal itself, and the canal is going to be irrelevant once China finishes its new canal um, in the next few years. They won't need that canal anymore, and the United States is going to be pretty furious that they don't get the benefit of controlling that part of the region from a transport perspective. That means that Cuba can actually start sending goods back into China without being intercepted by the United States. because there was a time a few years ago when Cuba's MiG fighter jets actually needed to be repaired, and they put them on cargo ships to ship them to North Korea, because North Korea is actually pretty good at refurbishing MiG fighter planes, and those planes were intercepted by the United States, and by the time they hit the Panama Canal.
Mm. Well, this is open mic night. Well, open mic hour. Well, a few more minutes.
I have one article that I forgot to put on the docket, but I'll throw this one in there.
Okay, earlier I didn't hear what you guys had to say about that one article I sent about Rex Tillerson. Did you repeat what you said? I only caught part of it.
Oh, basically that Qatar is not a offensive, does not have an offensive force. They actually have a defensive force, and that they're a porcupine, so to speak, in military terms. So that means that if you go in there into Doha, you're going to get pricked 1,000 times before you even before you take control of the capital. They have a very strategic military setup where they have coastal batteries lined up, some of the best hardware, state of the art military hardware. If you look up a company on YouTube called MBDA, they make missile defense systems that Qatar had purchased, billions of dollars worth of missile defense systems from MBDA, as well as they have all types of high performance fighter jets. I think they have the Dassault multi role fighter, which is very equivalent to that of a F-22 Raptor. So they're pretty strong. They have a pretty strong military for defense capabilities. But the problem is, if Saudi Arabia decides to go in there, they would have to take all of it, and they're not very good at military warfare based on the experience that they had in Yemen, and they wouldn't want to fight with Qatar at the same time while they're fighting Yemen, because Saudi Arabia is very fragile politically speaking. It only takes a little bit of an uproar to really bring down the government itself. And at this point, they can't risk something like this going into Qatar. So if they were going to go into Qatar, we don't know what the consequences could be, because Turkey has a contingent inside Qatar for this very reason, to deter the Gulf states from ever invading Doha. And then you have to factor in that Iran has a very strong relationship with Doha as well, because they share the Persian Gulf region for energy exploration. So if anything was to happen to Qatar, then it can spiral into the Persian Gulf, and Iran wouldn't like that because they control most of it. So Iran would have to get involved, and then you factor in some of the other Islamic countries that are sitting right to the north, like Iraq and Afghanistan, that has fighters on deck right now that are looking for a fight because they've already cleaned up ISIS and they haven't put their guns down yet. So there's a desire to get back into a conflict with anybody who puts their hands on the Emiratis, or not the Emiratis, but the Emirates of
the Kuwaitis,
Doha.
The Qataris, I should say.
Like the Qataris of Doha.
Yeah, I'd say the only thing is Saudi Arabia, their leadership is incredibly inept. They said they were going to wipe up Yemen in like 2 weeks. Sad joke. I don't think any of the players in the region, other than Iran, can really withstand any kind of warfare, or has anyone competent enough to stand against any kind of military incursions. They would have gone into Qatar and created a disaster, much worse than Yemen, because Yemen doesn't have any powerful allies like Qatar does.
Right. And keep in mind that in 2007, George Bush Jr. wanted to bomb Doha because he didn't like Al Jazeera at the time, because Al Jazeera was reporting what was happening in Fallujah.
My God.
So it was Tony Blair at the time, the head of the United Kingdom, who talked George Bush out of going into Qatar and actually bombing it.
Mm.
Right. It's a disaster all around, man.
Well, right, and this seems to be like the typical wash, rinse, repeat, right? For white men, when they can't get their way, just go kill a whole bunch of people that you don't know, and that solves everything. Whether it's Mogadishu or it's Doha or it's Damascus, or even Baghdad, we'll just kill a bunch of people and that'll be the end of it.
Right, right. Well, would you? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna finish up and say that they said the same thing about North Korea, that if anybody was to die, it would be people over there. It won't be people over here in the United States, and that's why there was such a urgency for Trump to go in there and take out Rocket Man. This is typical white male behavior, very grandstanding, using different names. Rocket Man is similar to that of calling somebody a Negro in the United States. It's all the same. Wash, rinse, repeat.
Right, right. But what are your guys' opinion on Mohammed bin Salman, or MSB as they call him, MBS I mean?
Well, he's fighting. He's fighting for viability, right? He has to show that he's a strong man, and that Yemen is a failure for him. So, going into Qatar may be his last hurrah, right? His Hail Mary pass for going in there and trying to assert dominance. The only difference here is that Qatar is not Yemen, and although Yemeni fighters are pretty good, I don't think you want to go against Qatar with all their weapons, with all their weaponry. They have some pretty strong weapons. That the only weak spot I see for Qatar is that they have a weak cybersecurity setup, which allows them to be taken down pretty easily with a cybersecurity attack.
Right, right. I'm just afraid that once they start any kind of war with Doha, that it could spill into Saudi Arabia, and foreign troops with their boots on the ground in Saudi Arabia, that could be a disaster, because then that galvanizes almost like the entire Muslim world, because they want to protect their holy cities, Mecca and Medina.
Right, and Kuwait's not going to sit idly either, because Kuwait sits right next door, and they don't want that sort of conflict. So does Bahrain. Bahrain doesn't want that sort of conflict either, because they can barely keep their
civilians in check.
Well, their members of the various Muslim groups in check out there, because there's a lot of uprising happening inside Bahrain as well that they have to keep putting down. If you can't handle a bunch of unarmed protesters, what are you going to do when real protesters come with their Kalashnikovs?
Right.
Mike, you got the article, or did you want to go over it?
It's in the group chat.
Can you post it again? Yeah, since my internet dropped, it doesn't show.
You got janky internet?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with it, man. I think the FBI, CIA got me, man.
It's
I think I said something.
Negro pay
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I gotta stop being a lazy Negro. Let me stop that. All right. This is from Express UK. All right. Title: Russia's laser cannon. U.S. concern over Kremlin's plan to wipe out satellites. Written by Sean Martin. Published August 14th. Title: A Kremlin-backed company is working on technology which they say will allow them to essentially vaporize defunct satellites and remove them from the Earth's orbit. Researchers at the Scientific and Industrial Corporation Precision Instrument Systems, or NPKSPP, a subsidiary of Russia's space agency Roscosmos, have drafted a proposal and submitted to the Russian Academy of Sciences. The proposal details how the company plans to create an object detection system, which includes a solid state laser and a transmit receive adaptive optical system. The process of wiping out space debris will rely on something known as laser ablation, which will see it use the excuse me, which will see it use heat energy to slowly evaporate objects. It is believed that, oh wow, excuse me. It is believed that construction of a 3-meter wide telescope, which will act as a basis for the laser cannon, is already underway. However, the U.S. believes that the laser will not just be used to destroy space junk, and that the cannon and detection system will be, will be used to destroy and spy on international satellites. Elam Poblete, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Arms Control, Verification, and Compliance, told the United Nations Conference on Disarmament in Geneva, which has been meeting to discuss a new treaty to prevent an arms race in outer space, that the U.S. has deep concern over Russia's plans. Speaking about Russia's attempt to destroy satellites in space with lasers and putting a space apparatus inspector, Mrs. Ms. Problite describes the Eastern European countries' capabilities as disturbing given the recent pattern of Russian malign behavior. She added to the United States, this is yet further proof that the Russian actions do not match their words. However, Russia remains adamant the laser will be used for space debris, claiming that a few centuries space junk could clog up Earth's orbit so much that it could make launches impossible. There is now believed to be an astonishing 170 million pieces of junk floating in Earth's upper atmosphere, but only 22,000 are being tracked. Wow. Some 7,000 tons of space junk circle our planet as defunct satellites. Junk from rockets and other metals and rocks build up close to Earth. Technologies such as mobile phones, television, GPS, and weather related services rely on satellites, so a cataclysmic series of crashes could pose a threat to our already over reliance for satellites. Space debris can be determined to space debris can be detrimental to space travel and as Earth's low orbit continues to become more congested, and even NASA has warned of its perils. Nicholas Johnson, the chief scientist for orbital debris, said any of these debris has the potential for seriously disrupting or terminating the mission of operational spacecraft in low Earth orbit. All right. You got any comments on this one, Mike?
Yeah, space junk is a huge problem. But go ahead, Mike.
Well, satellites even space junk as well, especially if they're one of your adversaries' satellites. So you must take those out as well. Um, yeah, I mean, this is Russia's next step, into Star Wars, Space Wars, as we were talking about a few weeks ago, and that the Trump administration has been pushing for. Um, Obviously, this is their go-to.
Yeah. Oh, I don't see, and obviously I know I could be wrong. I don't see Russia as the type to say, okay, we're using it for this, but in all actuality, that's an excuse for it to do something else. Yes, I do agree. I've been hearing the space junk thing for years. That is a problem, and since we're exploring space exploration and space tourism, yes, you're going to have to get rid of all that junk, or else it can pose a great danger. Um, I understand the concerns from the U.S. that hey, if this thing can evaporate space junk, what else can it do to our still any use satellites or anything else that we launch into space? Yeah, what they're saying is, they have concern, a valid concern about this.
But there's no laws in space, so um, if someone's satellite just happens to fall out of the sky, who are you gonna call?
I feel like that's a softball.
No, what I'm saying is, who do you report that to? There's no
Yeah,
laws
yeah,
governing space, right? So if there's gonna, this is why space warfare is gonna be so volatile, because all it takes is one satellite or two satellites to fall out of the sky, and next thing you know, you have a big problem on your hands. When you start pointing fingers at people that may or may not have anything to do with it. Now, keep in mind that at least 20 of the 20 nations actually have satellites up there right now that are very powerful. They can defend themselves on the ground as well, including Israel. So when you factor in that those who could put satellites up there could also bring other ones down, um, you can start blaming a lot of people.
right. And could they know who brought their satellites down if one were to go down, say, point a finger, say, hey, we know Russia took our satellite down, or will it be a question mark as to who?
It would have to be a question mark, because once you start pointing out satellites falling out of the sky, now you're talking about a declaration of war. I mean, we're already blaming Russia right now, for hacking the elections of 2016, and we don't even know if they actually did it. We don't have any evidence, but we're just blaming them anyways as a nation state, and that's very dangerous in itself. I think Hillary Clinton or one of the Democrats actually said it's a cyber attack against us is a declaration of war, and that's it's very uneasy language if you're a country like the United States who has the means to go to war, and you're dealing with another nuclear power like Russia who has the
Hmm.
means to defend themselves. You start saying things like that, and we also saw we reported last week that one of the Spanish jets actually fired a missile accidentally into Russia's border during a NATO exercise. It only takes a little. It only takes one thing to happen before we end up in on our deathbed, so to speak. Because once you start
Yeah.
finding nuclear weapons, there's enough nuclear weapons in most countries right now, between the United States, Russia, Pakistan, India, North Korea, China, um, the UK, France. It only takes a couple of those missiles to actually take us all out. To end human life.
Hmm.
To end human life. It's a very dangerous game to play. But for those who are playing, good luck, have fun.
But I thought space was governed by the same laws of international waters, or what do they call it, naval law? Is that what they're called right now?
Maritime
Um.
security?
Yeah. Yeah. Maritime. Yeah.
Maritime. Yeah, I thought that's the same laws that govern space
No.
currently. Mm, okay.
All right. Any more points before the show is closed out?
I wanted to bring up Omarosa. I mean, I think that's
Oh yeah.
a final topic that we can discuss.
She
I
released the video recordings of her conversations with Trump.
But she also violates confidentiality agreements that she had within the White House. So
Yes.
how she could do that without declassifying it, I don't know. I don't think that's going to stand up very well.
And the conversation, I forgot the guy who fired her, but he brought her into the situation room, and
Don Kelly.
it's been well reported that you can't bring recording devices into the situation room. They let you know at the door, hey, if you have recording devices, let us know, and they already know you can't bring them there in the first place. So A, you can't bring them there in the first place. B, it's a guard at the door saying if you have them, put it in these cubby holes as we have in the situation room. So she knowingly violated all these these rules of recording. Then she, on top of that, she recorded the president without him knowing. So people are already looking at her sideways because of these two situations. Now she's bringing in two other women um into this into this soap opera.
Yeah, I don't think. I think she has a get out of jail free card because one, those non-disclosure agreements aren't enforceable because federal employees can't sign confidentiality agreements. I think the Supreme Court uh, ruled against that 2 separate times. I believe was this 83 and 71, I believe. And then as for the recordings inside the White House, right now what she's released has just been, non-national security related stuff. But in case that she does have national security stuff, she basically called herself a whistleblower. So she might get whistleblower protections for who knows what she's reported, as long as she doesn't drop anything with national security uh, implications. For now, she's still good.
Depends on who's controlling the agencies, right? Trump just put in a dropped the security clearances for several members of CIA and FBI. So I guess in this regard, Omarosa had her opportunities, and I was hoping, I had my fingers crossed that she would actually be doing something positive for Black people on a national scale, and it turns out that she was just selfish.
Right, right.
She really didn't have a dedicated role that would be beneficial anyways, but she did have leverage because she had access. Your access is leverage, that you can sit down and actually talk to the president, and you didn't really care about Black people all that much, or unless you had an agenda and it kept getting ignored, and maybe that's why you kind of, you became a little bit belligerent. However, that being said, some of the things that she could have done, could have been beneficial. She should have asked for a envoy role to the African Union, right? She could have been the one to go back when Trump made his comments about Africa being a shithole. She could have been the one to go over there and ease the tensions instead of sending Rex Tillerson over there, right? What's the point of sending a white man over there after a white man has already made these egregious comments? I don't understand that. But Omarosa being that person, because she's not an idiot, right? She's very smart, from what I understand. She's supposed to be a pretty business savvy. She should have been on top of her game, talking to the president, saying, "Don't worry about such and such comments about shithole and all of that stuff. I'll go over there and take care of that for you." Or she should have been on the campaign trail with Trump, going into predominantly Black areas and speaking on behalf of Trump, being an ambassador to a more progressive dialogue between the Trump administration and Black Americans, because Candace Owens is actually doing a better job than what Omarosa should have been doing, right? So she's doing the job that Omarosa should have been doing in the first place. And when you have the president tweeting Candace and kind of ignoring Omarosa, that kind of says a lot about what your role really was.
Right, I agree. I think she was just selfish. Right now, just from what she's doing right now, her maneuverings in the media, you can tell she's very smart. I remember, was it a couple of days ago? She basically said that top White House officials were talking about the possibility of N-word tape, and then she referenced one of the ladies. I think her name is Katie something. And then basically, she went on to Fox News and denied it. And then the next day, she dropped the tapes of her saying exactly what she was talking about on the tape. So you can tell from that she's very savvy. But
yeah,
go ahead.
I think she collects leverage.
Right, it's more selfish. Yeah.
Yeah, just in case something goes wrong, she can. I don't want to say blackmail, but if it comes down to that, then yeah, so be it. But I think she collects leverage because I mean, when the news outlets was talking about her role, obviously we thought her roles. I thought her roles in the White House was much higher than what it was, but kind of find out it wasn't. But still, she was still in the White House, and she still had the leverage to do the good work, but she didn't. And with everything that was coming out, not only I agree with you, not only does it show that she was smart, but those same things show, at least to me, that she is selfish.
Right, but actually, I don't blame her for recording stuff because she's definitely not the only one who's recording stuff. Even his own personal lawyer recorded because there's some shady stuff going on, so they want to protect themselves. I believe there was one report they were asking, anonymously, but people, staffers in the White House, what's the environment like there? And the guy basically said it was like one giant Texas Hold'em, I think it's called, where everyone has their guns pointed at everyone else, just in case anything goes wrong. He's like, everyone has to protect their backs, and that's kind of the environment there.
Right.
But as for Candace, no, it's not Candace, Omarosa, she deliberately blocked, other black people, whether it's black conservatives or whoever, really, to get senior or not senior positions in the White House. That could have been an advantage. She could have leveraged to get these guys on into the White House, and then if anyone said anything, Trump could be like, "Oh, look, we hired all these black people. We're diverse," right? That could have been her leverage point.
She collected 6 figures for a whole year and did nothing, to my understanding. And she's basically a director of nothing. There was really nobody under her. And so if you put me in an environment like that, like I would be doing so much homework on what I think needs to be done not just from a business perspective, but from a cultural perspective for Black people. Because the reason why she got in there was because she was Black, realistically speaking, right? She used her gender and her ethnicity status as a bulwark for affirmative action, right? Like to say, oh well, Trump has the Trump administration has such a diverse cabinet because when he first got elected, she was in every single board meeting on TV, on the news. And I'm like, who is this black woman? And then it started coming out that who is this mysterious black woman with her? Oh, that's Trump's bedwench Omarosa. And I'm scratching my head saying, what the hell does she do? What do you do really? Like all this time? Like if I'm in the White House for 8 hours a day, there's got to be something that's going to be beneficial for me to do. Like I'm just not hanging around doing nothing, sitting at a blank wall looking at Google.
Maybe that's what she did. Who knows? But she definitely had access. I think she kind of moving. I guess getting to the end of the year, she must have pissed off Trump to some extent because he kind of isolated himself from her. But she definitely could have leveraged that position. But as far as the liberals, there are a lot of Black Democrats, liberals that were hating on her in the beginning for mostly no apparent reason, just because she wasn't I guess, well, she was a Democrat before she came into office, but she had her haters before she ended up doing nothing.
Well, because she had access to something that they didn't have access to, right? So her biggest adversary was Angela Rye because they're kind of in the same age bracket, anyways. So they came up at the same time. However, the hatred is not just towards Omarosa, but it's also towards Candace as well. Because Candace, I watched an interview with Candace, and she talked about how she was being attacked by liberals. So when we point all these things out, we see that it's not all peaches and cream like liberals try to make it out to be, or Democrats try to make it out to be. Because I saw a tweet from Omarosa when she got fired. After she got fired, where she basically said that there's a civil war between Black women, and she was referring to Black women who are liberal and Black women who are conservative. And I thought that was poignant.
Actually, what was even worse was that some of the people, kind of the leadership of these Black conservative and Black liberals, they basically told their Black how do you say it? Spokespeople to take off the gloves. That's one of the quotes that came out was "take off your gloves" in terms of addressing this Omarosa getting fired. Basically, they wanted everyone to attack her and I thought that was ridiculous. And anyone who involved in it, should be watched carefully because you can't take them seriously after that.
Now, as I hear you all talking about the different, we're sharing different aspects that we know about Omarosa. I'm starting to change my opinion about her. Excuse me, my opinion about her, going from, okay, she's selfish. Yes, I understand that the position, even though she was in the White House and the lower position she might have had, she still could have done something. But as I'm listening to you all, I'm thinking she could have been limited in what she could have done if there was infighting, infighting within the White House from a Texas standoff point of view, and infighting within black, pertaining to black women, conservative and liberal. Then she could have been limited of what she could have done to help black people in general.
Actually, not necessarily, because she didn't have to so much lean on the White House. She could have gone out and done some projects or some kind of outreach, not just to be kind of a person who says good things about the Trump administration, but someone to kind of go into the different communities and say, what do you guys need? And then we'll take it back and we'll try to pressure the administration into doing X, Y, Z. Right.
Okay.
But you're right. She did. There was hurdles, but the administration is generally incompetent. So that's so if there's any person who's competent in the room, something will get done. You know what I mean?
Well, they also said that when they did win the election, that they didn't have a post game setup. They basically thought that they were going to fail and that they didn't need any sort of transitional team setup. And when they found out they had won, they were all scrambling left to right to try to figure out what to do. And so they had to figure out what to put which pieces into place, because they thought that they were going to lose and that Hillary was going to win. So for all intents and purposes, a lot of those people that were there initially during the campaign were basically were basically auxiliary pieces to nothing until they figured out what was happening at the end.
And I for sure think that there was something that she could have done in terms of they're severely understaffed. Like I think the person who's what's her name? She's in the State Department. She's holding two different titles. I think it's a spokesperson for the State Department and undersecretary at the same time. And those are jobs that two different people with many years of experience are supposed to be holding, right? It's not something a woman who came from Fox News talking about the weather is really qualified for. So basically everyone there is incompetent. It really just takes one person with, skills and initiative to really further their agenda.
Right. I wonder what this is going to do to black people politically on the right, because you see Kanye not really, he's aloof, doesn't really have much to offer in terms of political rhetoric. And you have Candace Owens, who's very articulate and can actually hold her own, but doesn't have any aspirations to get into office. At least from what I understand, it looks like she may be able to get into the White House if things go well after this election, the midterms.
I don't know. Do you think if Candace Owens got in, she would do any better?
I think so. Judging by her candor, I would definitely say that she probably can do better. I mean, we laugh at people like ABL, but ABL seems to be in those circles. I saw he was in a debate a few months ago up in Washington D.C. So,
right,
there could be a strong movement of black conservatives coming out of the woodwork in the next few months. I mean, we see some of the what we call Democratic.
You said ABL?
Yeah, ABL was actually in a debate with with T West from Afro Synergy News on YouTube. They were in DC together.
Right. Actually, isn't he also part of Turning Point USA, which Candace Owens is also on?
Yep.
Okay.
Right. So I think they just need kind of what do you call it? Black conservatives with integrity, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want like if someone like Paris Denard, I don't know if you guys know him, he guest appearance on CNN a lot. Like him going into that position Omarosa's in, that would be worse. So we need
Why would it be worse?
because he was in that position during the Bush administration and he did nothing.
Or another do nothing guy.
Yeah, so so having him in there would really be no better than having Omarosa in there. At least Omarosa was, well, actually, maybe he was a little bit better because he put other black conservatives into the White House. But we need someone. I'd nominate Michael Steele, but I think he's pretty much done with the Republicans now. I don't know if he's a Democrat now, but so I would count him as maybe some of the black conservatives with some integrity.
You said Michael Steele?
Yeah, Michael Steele.
Okay. I'm just reading the chat because they're replying to some of the stuff that we're saying.
Oh yeah. Well, when Jedi said they froze out Michael Steele. Well, yeah. And definitely, you don't want another Ben Carson. Ben Carson is doing something, just not anything good.
He's not in the right role. You know, I think somebody with that sort of capability, you know, why put him in that role? Like I just don't get it. That's a role that somebody like Omarosa should have taken up, right? Like if you're gonna put somebody in a role, like why give him a job? And I just don't get it, right?
Well, for that position, they kind of put him there because he's also black. You know, that kind of what do you call it? Reflexive racism. Like, oh, he's black. He probably lived in public housing, so we'll put him as HUD secretary. I think that's kind of what happened in that regard. But they should put him as like Surgeon General of the U.S.
Yes, because it's more natural to him.
Right. Or at the very least, maybe not director of the VA because he's not very competent in as the head of HUD, so he wouldn't be any better in VA, and that's kind of a dangerous role to put him in. But maybe like Health and Human Services, something else.
The Department of Public Health is what he should have been.
Oh yeah, Department of Public Health, yeah, something like that.
He should have been there. Like that's his acumen of pre-med, right? That would be his acumen right there. But I just still think that I just think that Omarosa would have played a better role had she had been a bigger advocate, for black people, because a lot of the attacks are really coming from the left, right? It's not really coming from black people in general, but more or less coming from the left. And what she should have done was to go out there and stand up to the fire, and that was coming at Trump, because Trump was getting heard a lot of attacks, that he had to put out on Twitter, right? He's constantly he's constantly firing off replies to everybody. Like that should be your job. Like you should be on the front line. You should be the rifleman, and as well as the spook at the door, looking out for black people's best interests and actually advocating for many of the social equity policies that were on the table during the Obama administration that could have been passed under Trump, because you have nothing to lose. Now, had she been smart, she was still in the White House, what she could have done is she could have coerced Trump into saying, okay, the tariffs that go on China and what we're going to gain from those tariffs, we could actually redistribute those through social equity programs, for black and brown people, and that would be a victory for you going into 2020. Things like that could have actually solidified his position, and going into that latter half of his campaign. But
right,
you have a lot of selfish black people out here who don't look out for everybody, who don't look out for anybody but themselves.
Right.
And the black liberals are, I think, the Black Democrats, I should say, are. I don't know can we say they're worse because they've had positional power. They're not, as incompetent, as this administration, but yet they did nothing. You know what I mean?
Well, that's their job, right? I mean, when you really think about it, um, they make their career off of people's in impoverishment. So if people start to gain these equities in terms of social programming, then what happens to their role? Their role goes away. So they have to keep the struggle going in order to find job security. Because if you start lifting black people out of poverty or creating programs that actually create equities in place for them, their job goes bye bye.
Right. And the sad thing is for the Democrats is the support for Donald Trump actually went up since his election. I think it's something like 23% now. So it's really a lose-lose for them. I foretell more and more people, leaving the Democratic Party, but the Republican Party isn't hospitable either. So they have to figure out a way to, play both sides off of each other to get some kind of benefit out of it.
Yeah, the Democratic Party seems to be split now, right? So you have your corporate Democrats, and then you have your Democratic Socialists, right? So your Keith Ellisons and the rest of those guys uh, um,
Right.
um, are the new emergents, right? I think they've had 20 victories just in the last few weeks
Right.
across the country. So you need the same thing on the side of conservatives, and I think this this portion of black men, I mean, they talk about the percentage of black men that actually voted for Trump is more so than who voted for Mitt Romney. Um,
Right.
it's a telling sign that black men are starting to take a more assertive role in their position politically in this country um, when it comes to social issues. Um, if that's going to be the case, then we need to organize ourselves politically and create our own think tanks that actually address some of our concerns. And I still think that we as black men actually matter in terms of demographics. I mean, we only make up a small percentage of the country, statistically speaking, but I still think that our voice is actually much louder than we give it credit for. We have something like the Black Brain Trust, and it's not as popular as other platforms in the manosphere, but we're actually saying something that the others are not saying, but we're just not getting that airtime.
Hmm. All right. Any other comments?
I think you should read the chat. Complex is saying
Mm.
something to you.
Okay. Yeah, I'll send you all the link for the after show. Jedi, put your uh, email in the chat, and I can send you that as soon as we go off air. So yeah, it's been a great show. Got it. Great show. Good points made. Good squawk section at the end on the open mic. Um, good articles read. We learned. Hopefully you learned a lot. Hopefully you left this 2 hour live show knowing more than you would with other live shows. So, with that said, any other comments or questions or concerns or anything of the like?
No, that's it.
All right. Yada, put your email in the description. I don't want to say I got it, but don't have it. Then I'll send you the link also as soon as we go offline. So with that said, don't forget to come back Friday. Friday we have a great show for you all. This our economics Friday. So with that said, Don't be a stranger. Always please like the video, like, comment, and all. With that said, I will be sending the links out. Hopefully, Nagone can join us after the show. And with that said, thank you for watching, and we are out.